On today's show, we preview the UFC 236 main event, a rematch between Max "Blessed" Holloway and Dustin "the Diamond" Poirier. The two first met as young featherweights back in 2012.
It is all over! Brilliant. Dustin "the Diamond" Poirier.
Despite the loss, Max Holloway went on to become one of the greatest 145-pounders of all time. A record-breaking win streak saw him become a champion and defend the title in two dominant performances.
Max Holloway has retained his UFC featherweight championship.
The Hawaiian now looks to continue his legacy as he takes aim at a second championship belt with a move up to the lightweight division. Dustin Poirier's jump to lightweight proved a successful one with an equally impressive run that included stoppish wins over former champions Anthony Pettis and Eddie Alvarez. Now the Diamond's date with destiny has been set when he gets his first shot at UFC Gold. Hello and welcome to UFC Inside the Octagon. John Gooden alongside Dan Hardy. We're back for this big pay-per-view, UFC 236. We're going to be talking the main event for interim lightweight gold between two of my favourite fighters in the sport, not only in terms of their style, but characters as well. I'm talking about Dustin "the Diamond" Poirier and the featherweight champion, Max "Blessed" Holloway. So excited about this one, Dan. I think it's only right that we mention this is a rematch, and that's got to be our starting point, right? All the way back in 2012.
Yeah, a rematch between two fighters that have changed so much since the first time they saw each other, which is really quite crazy. Obviously, Max Holloway's come on leaps and bounds since that first fight. It was, what, 2 weeks' notice he took the fight on. He looks like a child for a start in all the promo videos. Crazy. 4 fights into his career, stepped in against Poirier, who'd already kind of made a name for himself on the WEC, into the UFC. But I felt very much like Poirier was the more mature fighter in that moment, and I feel like Holloway learned so much from stepping up to that big level straight away and then going, oh, OK, this is where I need to be competing against these guys.
Yeah. And what a lot of ground. They've both made up. And this is the first time that Poirier gets a shot at gold. So this is a massive fight for him. All right, let's put them side by side. And, well, first of all, let's mention that this is going to be the lightweight fight. This is a featherweight fighter moving up. It's somewhere that Poirier's been before. But for me, I think that he's filled out into that weight category. But Holloway, standing side by side, is a taller fighter.
Yeah. Taller, but with a shorter reach, you know. Very similar to, you know, to the main event in Russia. We've got Overeem, who's got very broad shoulders and slightly shorter, and Volkov, who's very tall, but has got quite a narrow torso. So the majority of Holloway's reach is arm length, whereas Poirier, some of that 72 inches is the broadness of his wingspan as well. Yeah, and looking down to pick out some of these That is crazy. We're going to come to this in a second, the Ortega fight. I mean, that's going to be a really interesting one to talk about. Look at these highest striking rates. I mean, this is going to be just a barrage of strikes from one side to the other. Different areas of the fight when it comes to the barrage of strikes. So, you know, one of them likes to start fast, one of them likes to build up to a finish. But still, I mean, these guys throw everything they've got and the kitchen sink at each other. OK. Are you ready to get into this? I am. Right. And John's been given permission. If I start rambling and talking too much, you can slap me because I am incredibly excited for this one.
I didn't know.
I mean, I'll warn you, my reactions are as, you know, as you would expect.
That's pretty good. All right, I might take that at my own peril. OK, well, let's look at these two side by side then. And we just looked at some stats. There's similarities there, but they're just numbers. There is another level that we need to consider when we talk about stats, and this is one of those opportunities to dissect numbers a little bit more. A little bit, yeah. The stats that we established going into Holloway's last fight against Ortega were further reinforced by the performance. He starts off at quite a steady pace. You know, he keeps his strike rate quite low, but his accuracy is fairly good. You know, but then as he starts to read his opponent, you can see by Ortega's face, he builds. He throws more, he gets more accurate, more successful with his strikes. So then when you're Ortega and you're taking 5, 6 punches that are not necessarily knockout punches, but you're getting drilled in the face over and over again, you kind of can't get your bearings, and that's where Holloway comes on strong. Poirier is at the opposite end of the spectrum. He starts hard. He throws everything at you in that first round to see what sticks, what misses, what hits your guard, and then he starts to be more specific with what he's throwing in the later rounds. So if you look at the stats for Poirier, his output drops off as the rounds go on, but his success rate still increases.
So their success rates, both fighters, their success rates increase through the rounds. The difference is that Holloway does it from much more of a, I'm going to read you as I'm using feints, whereas Poirier goes, I'm going to throw everything at you and see what works, and then start to pick. This is the interesting page, though. This is where I like to really get into the stats. So the reason I picked these two fights, they're the most recent past the third round that we've got of both of these fighters, which I think is important. So you can see with Holloway, you know, 40 strikes, 66, 50, 134, right? It's ridiculous. But then look at the success rate as well, 47, 52, 59, 68. So not only is he, I mean, he's more than doubling, tripling his strikes in the first round, but his success rate is also going up.
That sort of defies physics, doesn't it?
It does a little bit.
When you're getting more tired... and
you're landing less.
Yeah, well, and also they'd be sloppier.
Yes, but that's because he doesn't throw with loads and loads of power. They're much more peppering shots, which means he can find his way around the guard and throw faster. Whereas Poirier, he starts out hard. He throws a lot of shots, 63 of 132, so that's a 47% success rate. Drops off slightly in the second round because he's now landing a few more on the guard, but he's reading his opponent here. But then we're going, the work rate drops off exponentially. So from 122 to 73, 38 landed. So we're going 45%, 52%, 75% in the third round. Now, obviously, that was a stoppage, but that fourth round alone really shows you the kind of people that these are. Holloway, nearly 200 strikes, a barrage of strikes that just wore his opponent down, got the stoppage between rounds. Poirier's a power puncher, and he's landing most of his power punches, and every single one of his punches that he throws is power.
That is...
It's crazy, isn't it? That's just why I love pulling the stats apart, because you see the patterns and then you can start to assume, right, Holloway's going to build into the championship rounds. Poirier's going to start out fast and then try and find his opportunities later in the rounds with what he's learned.
Yeah, OK. Well, let's move on from numbers then and look at some real stuff. And one thing that I noticed in my research for these guys was the step through, how they carry their power through orthodox and southpaw. And I think the novice eye versus the expert eye is very different, and I saw some differences, but I know that you're going to give the expert analysis on this, because they are quite different in the way that they approach this, although it looks similar when you play it in real time.
Yeah, both very, very comfortable switching stances, both very good at covering distance and stepping through with their punches. Yeah. The difference is, and there's only a slight difference, really. The difference is Poirier is stepping forward and taking his power with him. He's stepping through to enhance the power in his punches. Whereas Holloway is stepping through to cover distance. I mean, the result is obviously he gets a bit more power in his shots, but for Holloway, it's much more about landing the shots and landing them in quick succession, staying on top of his opponent. Whereas Poirier is stepping through, and he sometimes takes his time. He'll step through and throw a big power shot. And you can kind of see it coming, but you know the power's there because he's winding it up. You can see it coming. Yeah. Like, when you watch Holloway throwing strikes, he's always got a tendency to step back into a fighting stance. Even when he's on a flurry and he's throwing a lot of strikes, his habit is always to circle his foot back to a striking stance, whereas Poirier tends to square up. Now, so watch this. This is a good example. So he steps through there, but immediately brings the foot back. And there are multiple benefits to this. This is what I'm talking about. So you can see here, he's in an orthodox stance, he's pressuring Lamas into the fence, and then as he moves forward, he realises he kind of stifles his movement a bit because he steps up. They clash feet here. Now, Holloway, you've got to think of all the other things that are going on here. He's got a hurt opponent that's a highly ranked guy that he needs to make an example of. He's throwing great strikes. Subconsciously, he's not even thinking about what this foot's doing. His body is subconsciously reading. The foot's there, that's not in a good spot, so what am I going to do? I'm going to circle it back to a good striking position. Does it every time, instinctively. Circles it back, bang. And then that allows him to throw, bang, power punch straight down the centre. Options. Options, exactly, options. Because Holloway always steps back into a striking stance, whether that's southpaw or orthodox, that tells me that his focus is maintaining the striking range. Same thing here with Aldo. And this is when he's really pressuring Aldo. Now he feels he's slowing down. Constantly switching stances, but always drops back to a striking stance every time he steps through. Poirier doesn't necessarily do the same thing. And there are benefits to Max Holloway doing this, but that's assumed that he wants to stay in striking range, where I don't always get that impression from Poirier. I mean, look at this. Like, we have several stance switches here. Watch this. Orthodox, He's going to step through southpaw orthodox, southpaw, and then as he jogs back, he's back to orthodox.
It's beautiful.
It's not even a conscious thing for him. It's just his feet support his striking. They go with him because he's been programmed very, very well by his coaches to have excellent footwork. Poirier, on the other hand, I like his footwork still, but you'll find that most of the time his body is kind of leaning at his opponent. He steps through to throw power punches. You'll see oftentimes when his back foot drags, he'll wind up. He can do it moving backwards as well, but obviously the story is him moving forward, catching people when they're getting backed up. I mean, this is a really nice example here. And again, we're going through stances. You know, we're southpaw, hits a shot, and then he steps through to orthodox to follow with that left hook. If he was staying in his stance, he would have missed that left hook because it would have fallen short. But taking his feet with him allows him to cover distance like Holloway does, but also allows him to throw power into his shots. And I feel like because these are the lighter weights, they tend to have to use a bit more body mechanics for power. The higher up the weight class as you go, the more natural that knockout power is going to be. Whereas for Poirier, he knows that he can really wind up and throw power into shots. What it does do, though, it tends to square him up. His feet tend to square up against the fence, which then limits his striking to only hook punches. Here's a good example. I'm lunging into takedowns as well. It's something we're going to cover later on. But this is a good example. Look here. Watch his feet. Feet are square into the fence all the time. And his defense, because most of his opponents know that only hooks are options in this range, you can't throw a straight punch from a square stance. I mean, we've done it for years and years in karate. It just doesn't work, you know, it doesn't work. If you're throwing straight punches, you need to be in a stance. So when Poirier steps in, he almost kind of crowds his work a little bit by limiting himself with only hooks. The other thing that takes away as well, the thing that we see Holloway do really well, is he steps in and then he drops out.
Yeah, defense.
Poirier doesn't give himself that option. But it also allows him to keep pressure on his opponent and level change quite comfortably without showing that he's level changing. So there are drawbacks to it and benefits to it, to both fighters' styles. Now, how they come together and what ranges they decide to maintain is the question, but I feel like Holloway's the one that's always going to go back to a fighting stance so he can use a variety of different techniques.
Dan, so far we were talking about the work rate of both of these guys and then their footwork. And Max Holloway, I said the word options. That footwork that he has allows him to land his feet, which gives him more options. What other options does he have in the fight? OK,
well, the first thing I mentioned were the straight punches, but a bigger key for me in this one is his kicking game. OK. Very difficult, again, to throw kicks from a square stance. Max Holloway always returns his back foot to a place where it's chambered, ready to throw another kick. And again, that could be southpaw or orthodox. He can kick off both legs as well. But all the time you see that back foot always return to the place where he can throw something else. And he does it in his, when he's punching as well. You know, if he's throwing punches from a stance, you never know when that kick's going to come up. But for Poirier, once he's squared up, you know that kicks are off the table. Yeah. Which means that Holloway, if he can maintain a striking range, I feel like he's got far many more options that he can go through before he finds himself clinched. I mean, the work that he does to the body has been really quite exceptional against several different fighters. And because we know that his punching is more like a barrage instead of a one-shot knockout, it's really the kicks that do the majority of the damage. And if we go back to Poirier's last fight against Gaethje, the one thing that Gaethje showed was standing heavy on that lead leg is a vulnerability. Yeah. Now, obviously, Poirier was able to maintain his punching power all the way through, partly because he really throws his weight into stuff. But by throwing your weight into stuff, you've got to put weight onto that lead leg. Yeah. And if Poirier can start to, you know, if Holloway can start taking away from that, that's going to start slowing him down, opening up the body kicks. So I'm assuming that ATT are going to be looking at Max Holloway. And in doing so, and if they recognise this kicking aspect as well, what do you think they might come back with for Poirier? Well, the eagerness to close distance is a given for Holloway, so they're going to be able to lean on that a little bit. They know that Poirier finds himself in close boxing range and then opens up, you know, a few different options for him, level changes, etc. But when it comes to the kicking game of Holloway, they've got to work around this because in order to land his punches, he's got to get past the kicking range. I mean, against Grisby here, he actually engaged in the kicking range to be able to get himself inside, and as soon as Grisby comes back with a kick, he's punching over the top. A benefit in having someone throwing a kick at the same time as you punching them is that they're on one leg. Yeah. And if you can just blast them with a good shot, even if it doesn't hurt them, generally it will knock them back. It looks good to the judges. The crowd's going to make some noise, which is always beneficial, and then you'll find them back against the fence. I mean, he's got good takedown defense as well, and oftentimes we see him pressuring people so they shoot first, which opens up his neck attacks. But if you've got to think Holloway's throwing a lot of kicks, he's going to be catching these kicks. That's a good deterrent for someone like Holloway, that you can take his kicking game away by reminding him that it's dangerous to throw them. If Poirier keeps catching those kicks, he's either going to counter with a punch, he's going to lift the leg and throw him to the floor, or, you know, he's going to be able to work his counters off those kicks. I mean, I think this is a really good option for Poirier to look at, because he knows he needs to walk himself into punching range in order to, you know, in order to get any strikes off in this range. I feel like Max Holloway needs to be deterred in throwing those kicks. He throws them so fast, he works that body so well. But if Poirier in the first 2 rounds can catch a kick, put him on the floor, can punch over the top and knock him back, Holloway then starts to think, I'll leave the kicks out, let's stick with boxing. And that, to an extent, plays into Poirier's game. OK.
Well, we spoke about the stance of Holloway, recoiling back into orthodox or southpaw and then having options from there. And I think you were just talking about it. So when you're squaring up as Dustin Poirier, if he's not catching kicks, then maybe he has the shot against the fence?
You've got it. That's exactly it. Because, I mean, if you square up against the fence, your options are hooks and uppercuts.
Which work well for him.
They work very well for him because he's able to rock from one side to another and drag extra power into the punch. But that also makes it very easy for him, because his opponent's bringing their guard up because they're expecting power hooks, very easy for him just to drop in and level change right underneath. I mean, we've seen him striking in and out the clinch really well, and I think this is going to be a key to opening up this, because in order to get to the legs, you need to make your opponent feel like power shots are coming. I mean, let's just go back and have a look at that. Look at the reaction that Duffy has to this. Like this, he strikes him into the clinch, and then when Duffy's backing up, I mean, this just shows you how powerful Poirier must be, because he's pushing forward with his right hand down. I mean, there's nothing guarding his chin here. And you would think Duffy, as a good counter-puncher, would start thinking about a check left hook just to check him on the way in, just to punish him. But he doesn't. You see Poirier's posted with the lead hand, but Duffy's expecting a power shot. Yeah. Even if he's taking it on the arm, he knows there's a power shot coming.
Or the body.
Either or.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where it's going to go, because if you know it's coming, you know, he's got that.
You're not firing.
Exactly. You're waiting. You're waiting for that to come, whether that's coming here or whether that's coming into the body. You can see Duffy's prepared for that. That buys Poirier a second to push forward and then drop his level and then force a grappling exchange. And I feel like shooting into the fence is going to be a massive benefit to him, because he's going to be able to get his long reach together, the fingertips behind the legs. He's going to be able to clamp Holloway up and then take him down. And then you fold him up against the fence like this, and that's when the height of Holloway becomes a bit more of an issue. At no point do you see Poirier allowing people comfortable positions on the floor to strike. Even here against Jim Miller, good head position, but immediately circles him into the fence. And now he's got the head exposed. And just worth thinking here, let me just take it back 1 second. It's worth thinking here that if you're Jim Miller and you're folded up against the fence here, you don't want to be square. Like, Jim Miller doesn't want his spine in line with that post.
Yeah.
As of right now, his spine looks like that, which is much better for Poirier to be striking, you know? His head's exposed on this side, which means that Poirier can work that near side elbow. And the other thing that we know Poirier is very, very good at is attacking the Darce choke. The first thing you need to do to break someone's posture is to get the head close to you so you can feed the arm underneath.
Yes.
And by forcing them up against the fence there and using strikes, that's when we get to see him start setting that stuff up. You see Garza's reaching underneath here. He's got the underhook, but Poirier locks a beautiful Darce choke up here. Yeah. Nice pressure there and a great squeeze as well. Like, I would imagine when he decides he's going to go for a choke, he commits to his chokes like he commits to his punches. I've got this. I'm giving it everything I've got. And even here, he drops to the wrong side. Yeah. Because Brookins is defending, manages to catch the arm so Brookins can't get away. I mean, there are a lot of creative elements in his game, but a lot of that is because his intention and his momentum carries him into the fight, and then he has to figure the rest out in the moment. But you know, he's just so good at that. He's so good at knowing where his strengths are in the fight and knowing where his weaknesses are.
And when you're such a powerful headhunter like Poirier, you are naturally as an opponent. Eventually, your hands are just that does leave a lot of opportunities. However, we are talking about a man with something like 80-something% takedown defence, one of the best in the division as well. Max is, I mean, he is the champion in the featherweight division. He's got it everywhere. He's got all bases covered.
He has. Great takedown defence, good neck attacks as well, which, in my opinion, comes off his takedown defence. I feel like takedown defence comes first, and then once he's figured he's got a read on his opponent, then he starts to look for the neck attacks. Beautiful takedown defence here against Lamas, and immediately puts him in a bad position on the floor. Same thing here. He's threatening the neck, so Lamas he abandons the takedown attempt because he feels like he's vulnerable. Great balance, again, as you would expect from someone at a high-level athlete like Holloway. Striking when he gets a moment, but also knowing when he needs to defend and also turn the attack around on his opponent. I mean, this is beautiful work against Andre Fili here. Great barrage there, forces his opponent to shoot straight into a bad position. If you're shooting out of panic, you're going to put your head in bad positions because you're here, you posture breaks. You go straight into a guillotine. Again here, you know, under a barrage of shots, at some point you're going to put your head in a bad position where Holloway's going to clamp onto it. And because Poirier can be a little bit untidy, because sometimes he can come in with big punches and then lunge in for the takedown, I feel like there's a neck there to be exposed for Holloway if he sees the opportunity. This comes down to him being on the fence, though, and being able to read what's coming at him and not getting caught up in the, power shots, which is the effect that Dustin Poirier has on people.
Yeah.
I'm coming, and there's the level change.
Yeah.
It's very, very clever.
Holloway is moving up, natural featherweights, slighter frame. Yes, Poirier was a featherweight, but he's an established lightweight now. And I feel, when looking at him, he's a lot thicker.
Yes.
Do you think that changes the course of this fight at all?
Honestly, I don't. I think it changes the course of Holloway's career because I think this is his first opportunity to fight at lightweight and go, oh, I'm a lightweight now.
Okay.
Like, you go back to his first fight against Poirier and he looks like a child. I mean, you look at him and you're like, I understand why he's a featherweight. But if you stand that Max Holloway next to the Max Holloway of today, they just don't look like the same person. He's grown into his body, he's filled out his frame massively, and there's going to become a point where moving up to lightweight is going to be beneficial for his, for his performances. Yeah. We're seeing it throughout the weight classes. Anthony Pettis is a good example. Guys that are moving up a weight class, taking a percentage of the weight cut off the table, which allows them to put a bit of extra power into their shots. And as we know, Holloway's a volume striker. If he can maintain that volume by not taking his body down to an uncomfortable weight the day before, and then, as an addition to that, he adds more power into his strikes, that makes him even more dangerous at lightweight than he was at featherweight. Exciting stuff, UFC 236. If you want to keep the conversation going, use the hashtag Inside the Octagon, the Twitter handle @UFC Europe. Keep it going. More comments, please. We love them. And we will be back next time right here out of this studio. Thanks for watching.